before we start working with embedding models, I first want to discuss what embeddings are. So embeddings are vectors. We talked about that briefly beforehand. But in terms of language models, especially the ones that we get from OpenAI, they are really large. And so the ones we get from OpenAI, they have a length of, they have 1,536 dimensions. And so in a single vector, there's 1,536 numbers. And so over here in this chart, we have we have these two coordinate systems over here, and each one has 3 vectors. And so these vectors, these are 3-dimensional vectors, because this is a 3-dimensional coordinate system. And so if you take this vector that's lying flat right here, you know, it's got a z component, it's got an x component, and it doesn't look like it has a y component, but its y component looks like it may be negative or 0 or really, really small in the positive direction. Can't tell here. It looks 0. And so these all, if we were to represent these in like how we would represent our embeddings in OpenAI, they would have 3 numbers, one for the x direction, one for the y direction, one for the z direction, and that's going to give us the coordinates that we need to get to the tip of the vector. And so in OpenAI, the dimensions are really high, 1,536. That means there's 1,536 numbers in the vector, and we can't visualize it, but the dimensionality of these vectors, instead of them being 3 dimensions, moving up to over 1,000, allows for us to be able to build in or encode the complexity in the context and the semantic meaning of different pieces of text. And so it allows for us to be able to, differentiate between different pieces of text. And so they're a key part of the transformer architecture. You remember how the architecture looked. Part of that architecture is being able to take in the tokens, not the words, but the tokens, and then convert them into embeddings so that the model is able to use these embeddings or these vectors to be able to differentiate between different tokens and different sentences, and be able to predict what the next token is and translate a sentence or generate a response. And so the embeddings allow for us to differentiate text or determine the similarity of different types of text in terms of contextual or semantic meaning. And that's going to be really, really important. And thankfully, OpenAI allows for us to be able to access their embeddings that were built and trained and learned on huge bodies of text. And so let's get into figuring out how to use OpenAI's embedding models in Langchain.